Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Hello and welcome to the channel. It's me, Chris Brooks, for another LSB Film podcast. Today I'm joined again with the marvellous Sir Nicholas Martin. And today we're going to talk about something different. We usually talk about 5G. We usually talk about politics. This time we're going to talk quantum physics. We're going to talk about what we think reality is. We're going to talk about so much stuff. I'm not going to even bother trying to explain it because I can't. Welcome to the show, Nicholas.
Oh, thank you very much, Nick. I must say that I'm not really a sir. If they gave me a knighthood, I'd
give it back. Yeah. No, that's fair. Most of them are compromised, aren't they?
And the whole system, where you queue up to be touched on the shoulders by the king or the queen or the prince or whoever's going to do it, is so demeaning. I mean, first of all, why is the king or the royal family there? Because they believe their DNA is somehow superior,
yeah,
to the rest of us. But
which is almost like a form of racism. That's almost like that is the definition of racism, isn't it? Treating other people because you feel like you're the superior.
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point. And you see, I'm sure the royal family feel pain, sorrow, they can understand beauty, they know loneliness, they know joy. And those are the characteristics of the universal human consciousness, whether you're Jewish, royal, a beggar in the street. Mm-hmm. It's all equal in the sense that we all share the same human consciousness. So I think eventually Britain will naturally grow out of this royal family business. I mean, not have a revolution and chop all their heads off like they did in France, but just say, there, please give up this fairy tale business. And we'll just carry on with the truth that all human beings are equal and we share the same human consciousness. I think it's inevitable that it's going to happen.
Yeah. See, I do think one of the big problems is though, a lot of people just see the royal family as being this like figurehead. They're there for tourism because they look great. They don't actually see what power they actually possess and how deep their roots go. A lot of like the sheeple, shall we say, they just see them as this focal point for promoting England. They don't really see the really negative dark side of the royal family. And so it's breaking that perception.
Yes, I understand. But I think humanity, I mean, I'm not an expert in this. We're just exploring as two old friends what's going on in this remarkable...
the old.
two good friends. Exploring what this situation that we find ourselves in is really all about and trying to navigate a way through. But I do think that humanity is at a crossroads in terms of its consciousness. And what you just said about the royal family, I mean, I've got nothing against them as human beings. I have nothing against any human being. But the idea, as you say, that you can put a few people in houses all over England with a coat of arms and dressing up in funny clothes and consider them as superior to Mrs. Jones next door is illusory. It's sort of like a childish thing, when you treat children and say the tales of Hans Christian Andersen, princes and princesses. And I think it's time that, I mean, it'll happen naturally. I do think that we'll grow out of it and we'll be better for it. And funny enough, America, which escaped the British Empire and created the written constitution after a lot of struggle.
Well, isn't like the English? Didn't they kind of just copy the English constitution? I mean, didn't Thomas Paine help write it? Who came from Thetford?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. What happened is they definitely took some good points of the British tradition and converted it into a written constitution. And that's what we haven't got. We've got an unwritten constitution in Britain. And you can make it up as you go along, and that really puts the parliamentary.
Yeah, but is it? I don't think it is unwritten.
Oh yeah,
there's books on it. Graham Walsh showed me the books. He said people say that England hasn't got a constitution. He went, they're there.
Yes.
It's here.
But
It's
you see,
written.
what happens in Britain is that if you have a mad government, I can call it mad because I don't think it's intelligent to take money away from old people, to take away disability allowances, to try and shut down the farmers, to do all this net zero. I consider all of that complete insanity, and so do many British people. But with their majority, they can put through acts of parliament that can do this, that, and the other. And that is slightly different from America. They have this formal written constitution, which is sacrosanct. You can amend it, but you can't override it. It has to be, very carefully done.
So it's it's the blueprint.
Exactly, yeah.
You don't veer from that.
No, exactly. It's a fundamental difference in approach. And I hope one day we'll learn from our children, that America was a child of Britain. And just as a bypass of something very interesting, all of this racism in America, where they killed the indigenous Indians. I understood reading up recently that the Pilgrim Fathers got on with the indigenous Indians, and the Indians helped them grow their crops, and they had ceremonies together, thank the universe for the success of their crops. So it was only later that they became racist and destroyed the indigenous Indian people.
And I bet even then it was only a small few that caused so much damage.
Yes, normally it is an elite, a disturbed elite that wrecks the whole of society. Yes, I'm agree.
It's terrible.
I'm with you. So I hope our children in America will teach the old fogies in Britain like us to mend our ways. And I do think that America is leading the way now. They're cleaning up their administration. For example, this US aid ended up in a lot of spurious organizations and in people's pockets, allegedly, and huge amounts of money. And I think that's been cleaned up. I think they're trying to clean up the judiciary. 2 judges have been sacked. Not sacked, 2 judges have been arrested for housing illegal immigrants, members of violent gangs, allegedly. And that shouldn't have been happening. We shouldn't have. Can you imagine a judge in Britain keeping an illegal immigrant who'd murder people allegedly in his house? That wouldn't go down very well over here either. So
no, it wouldn't. But unfortunately, in today's world, I could probably quite imagine it.
Yes, you're probably right. Yes.
Well, good.
Yes, absolutely. But back to what's going on. We have 2 streams really in our society. A stream which is progressing towards a technical control of humanity and increasing technology. And we also have a stream of people dating back to the Malthusians. The Malthusians wanted to get rid of a whole load of people. And Mikhail Gorbachev, for example, in a modern era, although he's dead, poor chap, he said he wanted to get rid of 90% of the population. And so they are the neo-Malthusians, people who want to reduce the human population as a reasons of control, because I think it's much easier to control a smaller population than it is a very big one.
Yeah.
And they also want to use technology to control the human mind, which brings us back to a very interesting point you raised about quantum physics. And there is a scientist called Roger Penrose, and he worked with David Bohm, and David Bohm is dead, Roger Penrose is still alive. And they both regarded the human brain as a sophisticated computer. In other words, a computer picks up through energy all the data, which it then puts on the screen for you and me to see, the words, the pictures, and the sound. And the human brain does that from an energy field. And the energy field is called a morphogenetic. And genetic is very important because that refers to the DNA. So it's the DNA which is the antenna for the energy field. And that decodes and gives you all the information. And then you can understand and navigate life through that. Because if you didn't have a memory, you didn't have any pictures, you couldn't go to Tesco every Thursday because you wouldn't know what Tesco is and you wouldn't know where it was. So memory and pictures and dialogue and words, which are all decoded from this field, are essential for our current consciousness. And
So
there
that's what
are
people with dementia would lack then.
exactly, yeah, something has gone wrong physiologically in their decoding message
Too
mechanism.
much aluminium.
Yeah, very often, or too much microwave radiation. That is coming out now. That Wi-Fi, for example, Robert Kennedy Jr., who's been put in the American government now, has said the Wi-Fi causes cancer. So more and more information is coming out, and two scientists have said that too much Wi-Fi or microwave radiation depletes something called, if I can remember it, phenylethylamine. Can you give me a prize for remembering that?
I can give you a round of applause.
Which is shortened to PEA. And that is depleted by microwave radiation, by smartphones, by smart meters, by Wi-Fi. And that depletion of PEA in the body means that the person can't concentrate. And so it could be that Alzheimer's or dementia is contributed to by this field of pernicious energy that is microwave technology. And same with autism and ADHD.
Now, just quickly, I was
Yeah.
told by somebody. Now, I don't know. I'm not into that kind of thing, but I don't disbelieve it. If you write 995
Hmm.
in yellow
Hmm.
on, like, say your home router,
Hmm.
it neutralizes the negativity.
I have no
So
idea.
it's to do with numerology or something.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
nine. If you by writing 995, it neutralizes the negative effects of Wi-Fi. Apparently, I don't know.
Hmm. Yes, I don't know. I have no idea. What I've done is I've just gone into a wired system. So I don't have Wi-Fi in this house at all. We just operate through the wires. And so the data comes through wires into the house, into the router, and then it's put around the house through a wiring system. And there's no Wi-Fi at all. And I never keep my mobile against my head when I use it. I always use it on speakerphone. I don't have a smart meter. And I think that's what I do, really. I mean, because this
It
takes
still makes me wonder whether that's why they really got rid of lead paint,
in what sense?
because it blocks
Oh, the radiation.
it blocks waves, doesn't it, of all kinds.
Yes, yeah, could be.
So
Yes,
if you've got 5G lampposts outside your house and you
yes.
had lead paint, well, that wouldn't get through because it can't get past the lead. So I was just wondering whether if this was something that they did back then to
Yes.
make the way for something which is happening now and in the future.
Could be. I have no idea. You have to paint all your windows lead as well, wouldn't you? So
You
you.
could have lead curtains. I don't know.
That's true. Yes.
We've had iron curtains,
Yes. That's
so
certainly true. Yes.
no, it's just that's just a
Mm.
thought.
Yes, could be, yes. I mean, there's no doubt all these things. And by the way, President Trump has passed an executive order asking the Department of Health and Human Services, which comes under Robert Kennedy, to examine the position of electromagnetic radiation in childhood sickness, which includes ADHD and autism, of course. And when I was at school, which was so many years ago, it was before the birth of Jesus Christ, we didn't have any autistic children. I'd never met anybody at school who was autistic. It's only a recent thing. And of course, this technology has been recent.
I mean, all I remember as a child, and obviously I'm only 45, nearly.
Mm,
You know, you saw the odd, and I will say the term because this was the term that they used, the odd spastic.
mm,
You know, the ones that were
yes.
like, but you never, but like you say, you didn't necessarily see somebody who you would identify now as ADHD.
No, no, or autism. I never met anybody with autism. I mean, it's a new thing. I don't think I met an autistic person until this day, but I don't mix with a lot of children, of course.
Mm.
And I'm not involved in that area of life. I'm not a teacher or anything.
And you don't work for the BBC.
Absolutely. Well,
Oh,
that's yes,
so
the British Brainwashing
yes,
Corporation.
yes.
Yeah. But to return to human consciousness, actually, just to say that Donald Trump has written this executive order asking Robert Kennedy's department to investigate electromagnetic radiation as a factor in childhood illness, which also includes autism and ADHD. And we at AICS, which is the organization that I'm part of, Adult Child Health and Environmental Support, had Robert Kennedy's then lead counsel, because they both worked on a case together to try to change the situation in America. So they took a court case against the American Ofcom, which is the FCC, and they won. And his lawyer, Scott McCullough, came on to one of our events via Zoom from America, and he's a remarkable man. And he's now going back to the American government, based on the American Constitution, to say that this exposure to all this technology, microwave radiation, is against the American Constitution, against individual rights. So that's a remarkable step forward, and is another illustration why a written constitution is a very useful document indeed. What I was going to say, returning back to what we were talking about, human consciousness. So we've got Roger Penrose and David Bohm saying that the human brain has brain cells, and those brain cells are antennae picking up data from a field, the morphogenetic field, and decoding it. But it's a very, very limited range. And that's why thought can never understand everything. It can't get beyond its limits. And thought is time, in the sense that you need time for thought to expose itself to the mind in words and pictures. So it's quite clear that thought, which is our consciousness, is not the right tool to explore eternity, because you can't have a time-based system trying to access a system which has no time. Eternity has no time. So it's quite clear that thought has to be quiet for a full understanding of the cosmos and of life.
Well, this is why the meditation comes in, isn't it? Where you clear the mind, which I've never really been able to do, which is really sad, because I would love to be able to just meditate. You know, there's people that can meditate, they'll go and sit in the corner. They could be there for 12 hours, and to them, it just feels like they've been there for 10 minutes. You know, I just struggle. I listen to like frequencies and stuff with my headphones, and I often go to sleep listening to brown noise with 432 hertz and gentle rain. But I've always struggled with the meditation, and I think that's why I enjoyed the Wim Hof breath work, because that took you to the same places where you would go with meditation quicker. Because you're just focusing on the breath and not breathing, and so you don't have time. Although your mind's still active, it's so focused on the thing that you're doing that it achieves the same objective where you're not thinking about anything else.
Yes, I understand. You see, I was, I always wanted to find out about God and the meaning for life. You know, after I left university, I was hell-bent on trying to find out what is the whole purpose of life, what is God, and all of that. And I went to Church of England, and I thought, God, you know, you've got to feel sorry for God listening to all these people singing out of tune every Sunday. I really felt sorry for the poor chap.
It's like parents going to a child's assembly where they're all learning to play the flute. It's like, oh, no.
So I went to a monastery, and not as an intern, you know, but I went to the monastery. You go on retreats, and I lived out in the world. And then I saw a sign for a Gnostic philosophy, which is a completely different view of Christianity. And I became a Gnostic, which was extremely interesting. And but then I met a philosopher called J. Krishnamurti by accident, not on purpose, just by pure accident of life. And he was a remarkable man, and he did a lot of work with David Bohm, and who was a friend of Roger Penrose. And what I think is the similarity with the Gnostic interpretation of Christianity, which goes back to these documents before the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea was when the Roman Emperor, King Constantine, or Emperor Constantine, got all the hierarchy of the Christian faith together and said, let's decide what we want to include in the Bible, what we want to put out of it. And if you go back to the religious documents, the Essene documents, which were the Dead Sea Scrolls, they have an entirely different view of Christianity, and that there's reincarnation until the consciousness is ready to meet the Christ consciousness. In other words, Christ is not a bloke who you have to pray to is a change in human consciousness.
Sacred secretion.
Yes, exactly. You refer to the pituitary gland and this endocrine system, which you find in Buddhism as part of a transformation of human consciousness. So, in fact, there's only one truth. It's just humanity has edited the truth for its own benefits. And now is a time when all of that seems to be falling apart. The truth is popping up all over the place. And what I think is very interesting is the correlation between modern quantum physics and the oneness approach of Buddhism and Christianity, in the sense that mankind needs to undergo a radical change in human consciousness from the limited consciousness of duality that we have at the moment. There's always the good and the bad.
Yeah. Would you say is? Oh, go
on. What I was going to say, the Krishnamurti used to ask the question, is there a good with no bad? And that, I think, requires...
Like yin and yang.
Yeah, and can all that be put aside? So that there's just no opposite. There's only the good. And you were going to say something?
I can't. Again, I've forgotten what I was going to say. I'm not very good at this. You'd think I'd be better at this after, what, 2-3 years of doing this? No. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I can. It just takes a kick up the arse. That's all it needs. So would you say alchemy ties into
Yes.
this as well? That's very important to this.
Yeah. I mean, if you go back to the Gnostic tradition again, you'll find Valentin Andrei back, I think it was a long, long time, 1200 or something like that. And they were the alchemists, but it's a metaphor for a change in human consciousness. It's an alchemical process symbolizing a complete revolution of human consciousness, whereby the old is put aside and a new consciousness flowers. And this is an essence of all world philosophical religions when you look deeper. And for example, Madame Blavatsky in Theosophy used to say you can't put new wine in old bottles. She actually used the term herring bottles. I forgot where they used to put herring, some bags or bottles made out of herring bones or something like that. And if it would all be smelly, so you couldn't put a new wine in those. You have to have a new approach altogether. And that's what I think is facing humanity, this radical change in human consciousness from a limited, conflicted life, where you've got this duality, a constant duality of punishment, reward, good and the bad, to a universal consciousness, which there's no opposite, there's only the good. And I find that...
Which would kind of be like heaven, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Isn't that what they...
That's right.
Heaven on earth.
Yes.
A new earth.
Right. Absolutely. A new heaven, a new earth, as it said in the Bible. And in relation to your point about meditation, I think one aspect that is often overlooked is that meditation is actually a state of listening. That it's not a question of trying to suppress thoughts, which is an active process. But if you do something, you'll get the opposite result. That if you sit down and say, I'm going to be quiet, you won't be quiet, you'll be continually noisy. But if you sit down with no objective and just listen to what is, that listening somehow miraculously brings a space in the mind. And in that space is a quality that is not found in the quotidian life. And that, I think, is, how can I say, a taster of a different consciousness, which is the inheritance of humanity. And the old approach to Christianity is that Christ is the emanation from the sun, the full emanation from the sun. And this ties up with physics, in the sense that if you take David Bohm, he would say that the thinking process is a reductive process. It's taken out of the cosmos in a very limited space. But if this universal sun is listened to in meditation, then it brings us to the Blue Brain Project, which is in Lausanne Medical School, which is a very advanced medical school, and they're saying that normal thought is the photonic process in the brain cells, in the DNA, because everything in the cosmos is energy and is light and at various different frequencies, as you've said. So when that normal process of thinking is quiet, the DNA is able naturally to unfold and bring into resonance a sort of dormant range of DNA, which is able to resonate with all these other frequencies in the cosmos, which are shut out when thought is the sole controller of human mind. And that's exactly what Buddha said, that the Buddha said, when thought is quiet, there's a transformation of consciousness. And a lot of this is unconscious. It's not a question of saying, I'm now going to sit down and resonate. It's an unconscious process.
There's a program that works in the back. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, it's not controlled by the will, because will is part of the here and now and the future and the past. And this is an entirely different thing altogether. And it relieves the mind of having to know, the Western philosophy wants to know everything. It needs to know absolutely everything at every time.
Knowledge is power.
Yes, absolutely. But if there is this abandonment of thought to live in unknowing, first of all, that's a tremendous relief.
That's why I'm thick.
And secondly, it might be the answer to all man's problems, to live in a harmonious society without war, without conflict. And I think we're on this, what Krishnamurti used to call crisis in consciousness. And at a certain point, we now are facing this tremendous opportunity to make a quantum leap in consciousness, as opposed to continue in time with the mess that we've been living in.
So to me, that does make perfect sense, because if you take away the quest and the thirst for all the knowledge, then you're taking away the ego as well. And I've always said ego stands for edging God out.
Never heard of that before. That's very good
edging
point.
God out. So that does kind of resonate with me.
Yes, I think you would have gone on well with the Buddha. Not that I met you, but
I've got the Buddha belly.
He said two things. Thought is no different from the self. The self is thought, which is memories moving in time. And secondly, I liked Krishnamurti. He said thought is not a vehicle to enlightenment. It's an obstacle to enlightenment. So I think in many ways, Krishnamurti was expounding Buddhism in the modern idiom, in jargon that in modern time. And what is going on? You've got a force which doesn't want humanity to go through this transformation of consciousness. It wants to keep humanity in the dustbin with a lid on it. And that is why they're so keen on technological progress controlling the human mind. And that is antithetical to this natural unfolding of the DNA coming into resonance with all these frequencies which are available in the cosmos, but shut off by the dominance of thought. And what I do like is Krishnamurti's reference to two rivers, that the consciousness here, while we live in this world, should have two rivers, one eternal and timeless, and one temporal, because you need thought to, because we're talking, you need the words of thought. You need to be able to go to Tesco or Fortnum's or Waitrose or Lidl, wherever you go.
Well, it's not even that. When you break it down to the basic fundamental level, everything, whether it's my studio light, whether it's my cup, my phone, this remote, this nose spray, the camera, everything started at somebody's thought.
Yes.
This would be a good idea. I'll make this. So everything you see, everything you look around, apart from like nature itself, was somebody's idea.
Well, you see, it's extremely interesting, because what about birth and death? You see,
That's an illusion.
Well, it's very interesting. This stream of thought, which you so accurately described, we can't navigate our society unless we're plugged into this stream of thought. I mean, it's impossible to live without thought in our society. Unless you're in a mental home, for example, or being looked after by somebody, you couldn't function. So what I was thinking, if I can remember what I was going to say, is what was I going to say? It's a
I
very
don't know.
important
I
point.
personally don't think thoughts are our own. I
No,
think
oh, that's
thoughts are,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, go
you're
on,
quite
carry on.
right. Quite your thanks for putting me back
That's
on
all right.
track. I'll give you £5 for that. £5.50 because of inflation. But what I was going to say is this is a stream of consciousness. We're thinking all the time. We're thinking now, and when we go to sleep, we're thinking in memories and dreams and all that. So it's a stream of consciousness that all humanity is plugged into. Now, is that stream going to come to an end, or is it going to continue after we die? And the reason I mentioned that is, Aldous Huxley,
Brave New
Brave
World.
New World,
Yeah.
yeah. He was a very good friend of Krishnamurti. Actually, it was quite interesting to read their conversations because Aldous Huxley took mescaline, which is a drug that gives you experiences you wouldn't have in the normal
I've taken DMT, which
yeah.
is like the ayahuasca,
Oh, yes,
but
yes.
in smoking form. So it only lasts like 10 minutes.
Oh, right.
They
And
call it
what,
dead. They call it a dead man's trip because you could technically do it in your lunch break. You could go out in the car, go to another galaxy for 10 minutes, come back, continue like you've just had a cigarette. It's
what
amazing
happened to
stuff.
you? Were you?
Um, what happened to me, and for the YouTube partner program, I don't condone taking any kind of drugs at all. But what happened with me was I didn't leave my body and I didn't go anywhere beyond myself, but it was like I was in a huge kaleidoscope with breathing tunnels, and it was more of a sense of how you felt rather than what I saw. I can't really describe it. It's incredible. When my brother and when we went into the forest and did it on a nice sunny day, and he did it for the first time, he he saw hieroglyphics and all the Egyptian stuff going across his vision, which is strange because it makes you wonder, well, perhaps that's how they wrote it. Perhaps that's what they saw, because even going down to like the burning bush in the Bible, that the bush was enriched in DMT. So they were all getting high, I think, from the DMT when it was burning. Therefore, they were getting all these messages from prophets and stuff because they were tripping balls on DMT.
They were tripping. What did you say? Tripping what?
Tripping balls.
Oh, that's what it's called, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was incredible. But then when we did it again later in the dark in the car, listening to Dark Side of the Moon, it was a completely different experience. And sound and everything was all distorted, and it slowed down, and it was like you were in fabric of time, and you were just no, it was incredible.
Fascinating, yeah. Well, the reason I mentioned all this Huxley is he took this mescaline and he had certain experiences, and he compared them to Krishnamurti, who never took any drugs. And Krishnamurti was talking about this timeless state. But the reason I mentioned Aldous Huxley is that he was married to his first wife, and he had another wife later, but she died, and he was obviously very sad about it. But he needed to have the probate papers, to carry on his life. He needed to have the documents, and he didn't know where they were. So he contacted a medium and asked the medium to tell him, and then he could tell Krishnamurti where the document, not Krishnamurti, tell Aldous Huxley where the probate papers were. And the medium came back and said to Aldous Huxley, your wife says the papers are in the bureau in the lounge, which is locked. And the key to the bureau is underneath the carpet by the front door. So Aldous Huxley goes there, gets the carpet from underneath the carpet, opens up the bureau in the lounge, and there are the probate papers. Now, the only reason I mention that is that if there is this stream of consciousness, and there seems to be, we're all plugged into it. And if we die, that stream continues with the mind caught up in it. It appears that you can
Yeah. See, I always look at it like transmission on a TV, or a radio. You could be tuned into Radio One, BBC
Yes,
Radio One, but then you
yes,
say, oh, I've had enough of that rubbish. So you put it on Radio Two.
yes,
So you're now listening to Radio Two, but Radio One still exists. It's still being
yes,
played. So
yes,
you're just tuning the frequency
Yes.
to whichever level you're on.
Yes,
And so when you
exactly.
die, you go to what frequency you resonate to. And
Absolutely.
so I
So,
think that's what hell is. So if you're always bitter and you hate everyone, you're
yeah,
just going to go to a place where there's more frequency based people like that.
yes, yes. So the question is, can that stream, with all its limited frequencies, end and allow the mind to be totally free? In other words, with a consciousness no longer caught up in time. And you know, the hell or the where all his Huxley's wife was not, and she obviously wasn't in hell because she managed to say where the
It's
documents
more
were,
like
but
purgatory.
purgatory, or a nice place in heaven. These are all temporal places. They have a beginning, they come to an end. And
Hmm.
at the end, if you accept Buddhism, you have another incarnation in this frequency domain. The question is whether all of those frequencies can stop. So the mind is no longer caught up in day-to-day life, nor in the life in the hereafter.
Almost just like in a vacuum.
Not so much stuck in a vacuum, but has a consciousness that is not drawn into these avenues of diversion. And that's why I liked Krishnamurti, because all those avenues are based on thought and memory. And why I liked what Krishnamurti said, he said thought is a distraction, a diversion, if you like. So whether all of those diversions can come to an end, which is what meditation is, the ending of time in the mind, and the release of mind into a state of entirely different consciousness in which there's no relativity. Everything is beyond measurement.
Mm.
And I think this is this crisis in consciousness that we're in as humanity at the moment. And the opposing forces, or one significant opposing force, is to try to divert mind into a cul-de-sac of technological control, first of all by manipulation of the human DNA, fixing the DNA so it can't naturally unfold with all the what they call junk DNA coming into resonance. And secondly, to control the energy field. So if you control the energy field, control the DNA, you've got total control over human consciousness.
Mm.
And their objective to do that, of doing that, is manifested through all this technological development. All these developments in the communication systems and all of that sort of thing. And the mechanism is to change the human DNA also. So this is an agenda which would stop mankind undergoing a natural transformation from relativity to eternity. And that's nothing to do with death of the physical body, something
No.
entirely different.
I do find that they are trying to, with humanity, they are just trying to turn us into cyborgs.
Yes, yeah, that's the technological control,
Yeah.
definitely. Yes,
Because didn't the web have a program that they were working on where,
yes.
like, work employees, where they can monitor the brainwaves?
The WFWE, the World Economic
Yeah.
Forum. Yeah, I mean, they were quite open about it. It's just the BBC don't tell people, and nor does Sky, and nor does GB News.
No.
Objective of the fourth industrial revolution. Klaus Schwab, who has now just resigned from being the head of the World Economic Forum, and his colleague,
I heard he's been pushed out.
yes, I don't
I
know.
heard that he's been a bit naughty and there's
Yes.
some questionable behaviour that he's done, and so he's actually been forced out as opposed to resigned.
Oh, right. Well, you could well be right.
Apparently, I've got no other than that's what somebody told me this morning on the way back from taking the kids to school. So I
Right.
haven't looked into that, but that's just part of what I've been told.
Right, I understand. What I was going to say, if you go back to before he resigned or whatever happened to him, he and Yuval Noah Harari wrote about the fourth industrial revolution, which is called the Internet of Bodies. The Internet of Bodies is an extension of the Internet of Things. Internet of Things, where your cooker talks to your washing machine and your smart meter, everything is integrated in what's called the LoRa WAN, the long range area wireless, sorry, the long range wide area network. And that's a microwave field of energy, All your Wi-Fi is microwave, your smart meters, your phones, your mobile phones, they're all microwave energy, creates a microwave field, which people have to live in. Now, that's an energy field. Obviously going to have an effect on your consciousness, because your consciousness is another energy field. So they're controlling the energy field of mankind. So that's point number one. Secondly, the Internet of Bodies, which is the fourth industrial revolution, is where the body becomes directly connected to the Internet. And that is the Internet of Bodies, which is what the World Economic Forum. Why did they want to do that? Well, if you read their document, and it was summarized by Forbes magazine, they said they wanted to remotely control and monitor humanity. So that is their objective. And they can do that if they change the DNA, and if they change the energy field. You've got total control over human consciousness. And that is what I would say a force on human beings currently at the moment. And I'm optimistic. I mean, I don't know, and you'd have to ask for your money back if I'm wrong. I do think there's enough natural justice in human consciousness to push that agenda back. And we do know, or rather we suspect, that there are hidden technologies that are waiting to be unfolded before humankind. Now, if you go back to Nikola Tesla, he knew that there's unlimited energy which can be taken out of what he called the ethers, and I call it the quantum field. And it's unlimited, and it ties up with another scientist called Lakizevich, who says there are no atoms and molecules, they're just light rings. And this is, I'm very much in favor with modern quantum physics, where modern physicists like David
ties in with like electroculture as well, doesn't it? Like farming, electroculture, using like copper wires and copper pyramids to grow fruit and veg.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm with you, yeah. I mean, for example, there's a man called Dr. Sam Osmanagic who discovered the pyramids in Bosnia. And he works with a man called Ken Roller, who is an American scientist who studied the work of Tesla and similar people. And I think eventually mankind will have these inventions that Tesla pioneered, where you don't need to put oil in your car or even charge it up to the electrical grid. There's unlimited energy, and that, just imagine what would happen if mankind was benefiting from unlimited energy.
Well, we used to have it. You look at some of these old buildings with the antennas on the building. They were energy harvesting from the ether. This is why cathedral, doesn't the cathedral stand for like battery energy pack or something? That's what a cathedral is. It harvests all this energy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the cathedrals powered their. They didn't have gas when they built cathedrals, I guess. But what I was thinking is there is that control of human consciousness through a misuse of the quantum field, whereby you can put a lot of people together and direct their consciousness and keep it under control. But this is the converse of that, the release of human consciousness from the bondage of having to work for its energy. In other words, if humankind was faced with unlimited energy, it would radically change the whole dynamics of human society. And that's why I liked Nikola Tesla when he said, the past belongs to the bankers and the future will be mine, or the future is mine, he said. And I think we're now coming into Nikola Tesla's future. And I think it will be very, very interesting when these technologies come into being, which are being kept away from mankind as part of a control over human consciousness. So you've got the necessity to clean up our energy field, replace this microwave technology with a technology that doesn't harm human consciousness. And you've got the potential of this unlimited energy for transport, for example, and all of that sort of thing, waiting, and med beds, these things whereby this energy, for example, if you take Nikola Tesla, he knew a tremendous amount about the pyramids, that they are mathematically geometrically designed shapes are made out of conglomerates of quartz and other substances which resonate with these scalar wave energies which are beyond visible light. And when people go in the tunnels, for example, in the Bosnian pyramids, and some people have had cancer, some people have come back from that pyramid and found themselves without cancer. And that sort of thing is technology which can be encapsulated in medical devices and people will be cured. And I think all of this is waiting. We have to dislodge this unhealthy consulting.
I'm of the theory that we've had all this before, and we've had to research. You look at the things like Tartaria, the lost civilization, where all these beautiful grand buildings with so much intricacy, and they're fascinating. We couldn't do that now. So I think this technology has been there. I don't think that we are the most advanced species that have ever been.
I hope not.
I think our history timeline is complete crap. I don't believe it at all. I don't believe we're anywhere on the timeline where they make out that we are. And I think history is a lie. I think that we're nowhere near as advanced as we used to be. That's all been suppressed and hidden from us. It's certainly an interesting time to be about at the moment because so much is coming to light. It's just what's going to be done with it. I mean, I said this to my friend yesterday. Do you think of how many things which have been exposed in the last 5 years, but the status quo is still the status quo?
Yes.
I want to know, what is it going to take for this big awakening?
That's Chris, where I'm so glad that people like David Bohm and Roger Penrose are looking at quantum physics. You see, if you take there was a man called Ilya Prigogine, nobody's ever heard of him these days, but he was a colleague of Einstein, and he looked at matter at the smallest level. In other words, although he was called a chemist, he was really a physicist in that sense. And he discovered that stable states of matter, which look so they never ever change, suddenly flipped when the conditions are right. And that's why I'm very optimistic for our humanity, given the fact that we're all sharing the same consciousness, that the illusion is that we're all separate, but in fact, we plug into this universal consciousness, whether we're alive or whether we're dead currently, unless you've liberated yourself from that stream of consciousness. Then that consciousness itself can suddenly radically change, because that's the nature of quantum physics. When the situation is appropriate, matter can radically transform. Now, your point about consciousness and breathing, and can you breathe in consciousness, and is very, very interesting, because you could say that consciousness is a form of light, at different frequencies. And light comprises everything in the universe. So you could say that everything is conscious. It's just a question of the level of consciousness, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, we know trees and plants are all conscious and living things, don't we?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so I do think, as you say, it's an absolutely remarkable time for humanity at this moment, when we're going to do this. I think you can feel it coming, and you can speak now about things which you couldn't have spoken about 5 years ago, because there has been a movement in human consciousness, much more openness. I mean, you have got lunacy going on in the contrary department, whereby...
well, you've got your Elon Musks for a start.
I wasn't thinking as much Elon Musk. I was thinking, there was a man who was driving his car, and he drifted into a bus lane, and these cameras photographed him and sent him a fine. And he said that he identified as a bus. And so he wrote to the borough and said, I'd like you to quash that fine because I identify as a bus. So you have no right to fine me because I'm a bus. And they let him off the fine.
Is that real?
Yes, apparently. So I heard.
Is that recent?
Well, I mean, this madness about becoming whatever you want, children go to
Yeah, I
school.
suppose it must be
Yeah.
fairly recent. I'll have to look
Mm,
into that. There's a
yeah.
video in that. Oh
So
dear.
that type of lunacy is quite extraordinary and is also a diversion from this tremendous movement that is going on inside human consciousness to set man free. And I think this is, as you say, a truly remarkable time to be alive. And I know people don't like Donald Trump much. And
I don't see. It's a bit strange. I like him. I enjoy watching him. I think he's very entertaining. I think he says all the right things. I just don't know if I necessarily trust him.
yes, yeah.
I
Well,
think he's there to maybe generate a lot of trust, and then perhaps walk you down a road that you didn't want to walk down.
yes. Well, I mean, you see, I don't see Trump as separate from our human consciousness. And what I think is not so much Donald Trump doing these things, it's human consciousness doing these things. And what is interesting is that Donald Trump was very close to his uncle, John Trump. Now, John Trump was a Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a very advanced university in physics in America. And he was this chap, John Trump, who was very influential in Donald Trump's upbringing, apparently, was one of the last pupils of a man called Arthur Matthews, who was the protege of Nikola Tesla. Now, it was interesting that John Trump was sent to retrieve and interpret Nikola Tesla's papers. Now, after Nikola Tesla died. Now, I can't imagine, this John Trump, very intelligent man, professor at MIT, being given access to Nikola Tesla's papers, and in there must have been free energy technology. And this chap, John Trump, being very influential on Donald when he was a young man, I can't imagine that Donald Trump doesn't know all about this free energy technology. But there's a time and a place. And you can't, for example, if you've got a load of corrupt judges, you're not going to get justice. You've got to clean up the judiciary first. Then you can make arrests for people who've been in high-up positions and you can deal with them. But if you're trying to arrest them with a corrupted judiciary, you ain't going to get nowhere far. And I do think this energy, which is coming into human consciousness, is a cleansing energy. It's cleaning up corruption all over the place. We now know about Epstein, P. Diddy. We're going to know a lot more. We know about the assassination of JFK. We know about Martin Luther King. We're knowing about Robert Kennedy.
Well, they haven't. Well, they're still not really moving that far away from the original with the JFK thing, are they? I heard that they're still saying it was still him that shot, but he may have had help.
I think. I could be wrong, but it's now pretty clear that the CIA were involved. You had foreign agents involved, and I don't think it'll be long, maybe in the next couple of years, when more information comes out who those actors were and who employed them and what actually went on. So I do, and same with the Epstein ring. I think that, and the P. Diddy ring, that there's much more to come out about Kennedy's murder and about the Epstein ring. And all of these things are going to be presented to human consciousness as if there's a sort of cleaner going on, coming out, getting all this behind the skirting boards, under the cupboards, sticking it out and saying, what a bloody mess, have a look at it. And that awareness is a disinfectant. For example, a certain member of the royal family, Prince Andrew, is alleged to have been involved with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That much has been given to us. Now, the public don't approve of that. And that's why I think that Yorkshire is trying to take away his Duke of York title, because they're now aware that paedophile Epstein was not a good chap to mix around with. And they've stripped him of his title, want to strip him of his title, I heard. I don't know whether that's true or not. But they certainly, charities have asked him not to be their representative anymore because of awareness, public awareness. So you can see it's like a disinfectant. It's cleaning up our society.
The purge.
Now, a purge, yeah, a purging. And that's actually what Krishnamurti talked about in meditation. It's a purgation of the mind, a cleaning up of all the a cleaning out of the energy of thought and opening up to the energy of the absence of thought. And you and I are not separate from our society, which is our consciousness. There's no difference between society and our consciousness. You and I are part of society. It's part of our consciousness. They're not separable.
I've always said our consciousness and God, if you like, because I believe God is just love consciousness. And that is, if you take a hologram and you smash that hologram onto the floor and it breaks into 1,000 pieces, every little shard still contains the whole picture.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And that's what we are.
Yeah.
We're just a shard.
Yes. And that's why we should treat each other with tremendous respect, and why we should never, ever have another war. If I were a politician, I would I would make the armaments and the guns industry illegal. And no human being can have a gun to kill somebody, because it's a childish mentality to solve your problems through blowing your brains out. I mean, it's just so childish, isn't it?
It is, but there's a lot of people that don't think like we do.
Yes, that's why we need this radical change in the stream of consciousness that we all live in. And that's why I do like this phrase, two rivers of mind, the eternal mind and the temporal mind, while we're in this domain. So that when we face our last breath, it's in irrelevance, because the other river will be so immense that this tiny little death is insignificant and the mind is already free. And I think this is a tremendous thing for humanity at the moment, this opportunity for complete change in a human
Well, it's almost like a liberation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yes, yeah.
No. Well, let's hope that progresses soon, because I'd like to witness that, and I'd like to see my children benefit from it.
Well, I mean, and I say, if I'm wrong, you can have all my money back, all your money back.
Yeah, all £2.50.
I charge you £5.50, but you can have £5.50 back. But I'm optimistic for your children. And don't forget, we're looking with the relative measure of time. We're so conditioned to time. And we're talking about timelessness and a sudden change. And I go back to Ilya Prigogine. He said, when the circumstances are right, this material thing suddenly changes. And it's not a time-based thing. It's a question of quantum leap, instantaneously a quantum leap. So I'm very optimistic for our humanity, because there are signs all over the place. I mean, there are signs of complete madness, like identifying as a bus or a cat and all of that, and not knowing what a woman is. But now there are signs that people are understanding what a woman is at last. And
it still blows my mind that in 2025 that's the conversation.
Yes, exactly. Well, that shows you how sort of off-piste we've become. But I think there's so much. And the other thing, Chris, why I'm optimistic for your children, most people are fundamentally decent. I mean, of course, you get crooks, but
I said this to my boy this morning, my 9-year-old boy. I said, just don't forget. I said, 90% of the people are decent people. It's only like 10%, and then the 1% super psycho people that ruin it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's and I think that in itself is an indication of the decency. And I think British society on the whole is pretty decent. People don't like to punch each other in the face all day long. They want to open the doors and let somebody go first. They want to be polite.
Yeah. I just think that people need to grow a pair of balls, I guess, because I think, what's the saying? The world isn't... the problem with the world isn't the evil that's in it. It's the people, it's the good people that just stand by and do nothing and let it happen.
Yes, exactly. That's why I became a counselor. I mean, it's an insignificant thing to do, but it's a small step. And I think if you want to change the world, first of all, you have to start with yourself and work locally. And given the fact we're all in this shared consciousness, and we're all in I think really it's acceptable to call it a quantum consciousness. In quantum, there's no locality. That's why thought can't get at it. If you understand quantum, you don't, because it's beyond thought, really. And in quantum, there's no locality, no distance. So what a person might be doing in a local council might appear insignificant, but if he's acting honorably, trying to do the right thing, then that is a small change in the political field of humanity, because local government is part of government. It's not separate from government. So anybody can join and stand as a local councillor and try to do the right thing. And that's a step towards order.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll take it back to Thetford.
Yeah.
You could do the 20-minute. We did the 20-minute neighbourhood council meeting where, because just a group of us said, right, let's get some leaflets designed and printed, and I think we've done about 5,000, and about, I don't know, 10 of us just went out and done as many as we could around Thetford, and so we got 200 people down there. And because of that meeting, and because it was filmed and it did quite well, that's what then spurred on things like Colchester Council Watch and all these other things. So I've always argued that if you want to achieve success, that you're right, you do it on a local level, because it's easier to do it on a local level, but then other people see what's happened on a local level, and then the next town says we can do that, and then you create it's throwing the pebble in the water, isn't it, and creating the ripples. As opposed to trying to tackle it up here, you start here and collapse it.
Definitely, yeah. No, I agree with that. And also, there's non-locality. I come back to quantum. It's very difficult to understand. What you're doing, what you did in Thetford, could influence New York. And people say, how can that be? He's stuck in Thetford, he's miles away from anywhere. New York is across the Atlantic Ocean. But the consciousness is universal. There's no distance, no locality in human consciousness. And that's why I'm so optimistic that localism has an effect on the whole. It's not local at all. It's a step in the whole. And
have you heard of the 100 Monkeys?
Yes. I mean,
that's what it is, isn't it?
Yes, you see that I come back to David Bohm, Krishnamurti, and a man called Rupert Sheldrake. And Sheldrake is the person who took the quantum field. He knew David Bohm. He took the quantum field aspect and put it into biology. He is a biologist. And he developed this notion of the morphogenetic field, that we were talking about. And that's not isolated. It is part of the stream. You might have your individual memories in your unique quantum field, but it's part of an overall stream.
Is that what your aura is?
Yes. In my view,
same thing. It's
yes,
the bit just outside of your body.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah, and it's just a modern explanation in many ways. I think the ancient Ayurvedic medicine and the ancient Chinese medicine will be understood through quantum physics, because in quantum physics is now understanding things which were formerly blocked off by the limited consciousness of allopathic medicine. That they said homeopathy is completely futile because the dilutions are so intense, it can't have any effect on the human body. But if you approach it from the quantum dimension, it's entirely a different approach, utterly different, where very, very small things can have tremendous effect on the quantum field. And your point about the 100 monkeys, where some sheep were thought to do a difficult maneuver in New Zealand or Australia, and when the English sheep who had never done this trick were taught, they picked it up almost immediately because of the quantum field, the shared quantum field, morphogenetic field of the sheep. And we have our own quantum field, of course, and that's what Rupert Sheldrake pointed out. And that is a quantum approach to biology.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
it's fascinating stuff, isn't it? I could talk for ages, but unfortunately, I've got another podcast to do. Okay. Listen, thank you so much for your time today. I love our chats. And the time goes really quickly, so it's win-win for me. But no, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to? Have you got anything to plug, or any events coming up, or anything that you want to?
That's a good point. We have got an event at St. John's Community Centre, E16, I think it is, in Albert Road in Docklands, on the 14th of May, where we're looking into technological aspects as a control of human consciousness. So that's the 14th of May at St. John's Community Centre in Docklands. And if anybody wants to go, could they send me an email? Can I give you my email address?
Yeah.
Maybe you can put it underneath the...
I'll put it in the video description as a link.
Yeah, yeah, if you could do that. And if they wanted to come, if they send that, because we've only got 100 places. So places will be limited.
What I'll do is, because this podcast might air after the event, I will clip this and do it as a little separate standalone video.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So-
that's fantastic.
So cool. But yeah, listen, I hope everyone's enjoyed this chat. I have very much enjoyed it, as I always do. Thank you for joining us. And if you've made it all the way through, fair play to you. Good on you. Thank you for joining me, Nicholas. Really enjoyed our chat. And until next time, take care of yourselves and bye for now.